Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week. If you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. Today I'll be teaching how to make a crochet sundress. Fun in the sun is just better in a sundress, especially when it's as cute as this star stitch affair. So if you're into feeling a breeze while soaking up some rays, this one's for you. Speaking of, if you're liking the warm weather wearables or prefer cool cozy cover-ups, you're in the right place. We've got hundreds of modern crochet patterns from bikinis to sundresses and sweaters and cardigans, with many more on the way, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now it's time to get on the show, so without further ado, for this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 700 grams of yarn, and that's 1,700 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5 and 7mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us the best memory you have at an amusement park. For me, there was this one time where I held hands and screamed at the top of our lungs with a complete stranger during the Tower of Terror at Disneyland. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and star stitch. This tutorial is for size small, but you can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we are all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Next, we're going to grab our 5mm hook and start off by making a chain the height that we'd like for our waistband to be. I like for mine to be about 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 8. Now that we have our chain, we're going to do a slip stitch row. Block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, insert with a slip stitch. Insert your hook. When we have those 2 loops, yarn over, gently pull through both loops. Let's do this again. Into that next chain, insert your hook, pull through both loops. Continue putting 1 slip stitch into every chain, and remember not to tug too tightly after every stitch, otherwise the following row will be too tight to work into. We've put 1 slip stitch into every chain. Let's do our row 2. Chain 1, flip our work. Now they are going to be back loop slip stitches. So find the last stitch from our previous row, insert into that back loop, gently pull through 2. Once more into that following stitch's back loop, insert, gently pull through 2. Continue putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again, until we can get a waistband that can stretch across the widest part of your chest, making sure that we end on an even number. My waistband is finished. I have a total of 114 rows. My length is 18 inches or 45 centimeters unstretched. Now we're going to seam it together. Place our front panel on top of our back panel, making sure that our waistband isn't twisted. Insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then yarn over, pull through everything. This is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam, so let's get that started. Find that first stitch into the front panel and insert only in through that front loop. Find the next stitch into the back panel and insert only into that back loop. Yarn over, pull through all 3 loops on our hook. Let's do this again. Into that next stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop. Yarn over, pull through all 3. Continue this until we don't have any more stitches left. We've just seamed our waistband. Now we're going to get started on the top half, and we're going to be putting 1 single crochet into every side row. So start with a chain 1. Doing my first single crochet, I'm going to find my first side row, which is this divot right here. I'm going to insert my hook into that top loop, and if you'd like to weave in your tail ends at the same time, place the tail end over your hook and single crochet once. Let's do this again. This is my following side row, which is this raised row. Find that top loop, insert your hook in through there, place your tail end over your hook, and single crochet again. Continue putting 1 single crochet into every side row and then slip stitch into that chain space. And a quick tip, we will have the same amount of single crochets as side rows that we have. Our single crochet row is done, and before we get started on our star stitch detail, we're going to want to try this on, making sure that this can fit comfortably over us. The single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. So if it's a little too tight, reduce some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's a little too loose, reduce some stitches with a tighter grip. And let's start our star stitch with a chain 1. To do our star stitch detail, we're going to need to pull up 6 loops. So start by inserting your hook into that first available stitch. We're going to yarn over, pull up a loop to get 2 loops on our hook. Into that following stitch, pull up another loop, into the stitch right after that, pull up a loop, second to last stitch that we're going to pull up. We should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. We just need 1 more because we ultimately want 6 loops on our hook. So into that following stitch, pull through. When we have those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 loops on our hook, we are going to yarn over, pull through all 6 of those loops, and then to finish off our first star stitch set, we're going to do a chain 1. That chain 1 that we did, as you guys can see, forms this little hole that we have here, or the eye of the star stitch. To get started on the second one, we're first going to need to insert our hook into that hole that we just made. So into the eye of the star stitch, we're going to insert and pull through to get 2 loops on our hook. We are now going to be inserting our hook in through the last post of our previous star stitch. So in between those 2 tall posts that we have, we're going to insert our hook in through there, pull through to get 3 loops on our hook, and then also into the last stitch that our previous star stitch was worked into, insert in through that stitch, pull through for 4 loops on our hook. Like our previous star stitch, we ultimately want 6, so into the following 2 stitches, we're going to pull up a loop into each of those. So into that next stitch, pull through for 5 loops, and then into that next stitch again, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 loops. Now from here, yarn over, pull through all 6 of those loops, and then chain 1, forming the eye of our star stitch. Now it's going to be our previous star stitch, making our way all the way around, so let's do this again. Start by inserting your hook into the eye of that star stitch, and pull up a loop. Next is going to be inserting our hook into the last post from our previous star stitch. So in between those 2 posts that we have, insert your hook, pull through, and then insert your hook into the last stitch that our previous star stitch was worked into. So into that occupied stitch, pull through for 4 loops, and then pull up 1 loop into the next 2 stitches as well. So into that next stitch, pull up a loop, into the next stitch, pull up a loop. When we have those 6 loops, yarn over, pull through all 6, chain 1 to finish off the star and form the eye of our star stitch. Let's do this once more, a little bit quicker. Into the eye of our star stitch, pull up a loop, into the last post of our previous star stitch, pull up a loop, into the last stitch that our previous star stitch was worked into, pull up a loop, and then into each of the next 2 stitches because we need 6 loops on our hook. From there, yarn over, pull through all 6, and chain 1. Continue doing this, making our way all the way around. We have made our way all the way around with our first star stitch row. To close off our star stitch row, we're going to half double crochet into that same stitch that our last star stitch is worked into. So we did do the chain 1 after that star stitch set. Then we're going to yarn over, insert your hook into that same stitch that our last star stitch is in, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. Now our row 1 is complete. Let's close it off. Find the chain 1 that we made when we started this row, slip stitch in through there, insert your hook, pull through everything, and then we can get started on row 2. A quick tip before we get started, each of our even number rows is going to be a single crochet row, and that slip stitch that we made that we just did to connect our odd number row is going to look like a stitch, but it's actually not, so just keep that in mind when we get started on the following row. We're going to chain 1 and flip our work. We're all going to start by single crocheting into the top of the half double crochet that we made when we ended our previous row. So remembering that that stitch nearest to our hook isn't our first stitch, that was the slip stitch to connect the row. But into that following stitch, you can tell that it's a half double crochet because it's a little bit longer. You're going to insert your hook in through there with just 1 single crochet. Now we're going to single crochet once into the following eye of our previous star stitch. So as you guys can see, these little gaps that we have, if we pull them apart, are the eyes of our previous row. So finding that following eye, we're going to insert our hook in through there with just 1 single crochet. Now that's just going to be for the first star stitch that we have. Into that following star stitch's eye, we're going to be doing 2 single crochets. So into that stitch, insert with 1 single crochet, and then into that same stitch, a second single crochet. It's going to be a continuation of this for the rest of the row. So find the following eye from our previous row, and 2 single crochets into there. There is 1. There is 2. Let's do 1 more. Into the following eye, insert with 2 single crochets. There is 1. There is 2. Continue this till we reach the end of the row. We have made our way all the way around with our single crochet row. Now the last single crochet that is going to be worked into the chain space from our previous row. Since this is mine right here, I'm going to insert my hook in through there with 1 single crochet. Now for each of our even number rows, we're going to have the same amount of single crochets as side rows that we made for our waistband, minus 1. So as an example, I had a total of 114 slip stitch rows. For this single crochet row, I have a total of 113 single crochets. And now to close off this row, we're going to slip stitch it into the chain space that we made when we started this row. So we have just slip stitched into our chain space, and keep in mind that that slip stitch is now going to be a stitch, and I'll show you guys how that's going to be worked into our pattern right now. Our following row is going to be another star stitch row. And keep in mind that this following star stitch row is not going to be the same as every other star stitch tutorial there is out there. It's going to be a little bit different for this pattern. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. So let's all start with a chain 2 and flip our work. And how we're going to do this first star stitch, we're going to be inserting our hook into the second chain from our hook. So into that chain, insert it in through that loop, yarn over, pull through, and then also into that following stitch, which is the top of the slip stitch that we made when we connected our previous row. So insert your hook in through there as well. Yarn over, pull through, and the rest of this is going to be the same. We ultimately want 6 loops on our hook, so into that following stitch, insert your hook and pull up a loop for 4 loops. Into that following stitch, insert your hook in through there, pull up a loop for 5 loops on our hook, and then into that following stitch, pull through for a total of 6 loops. Now yarn over, pull through all 6 of those loops, and then chain 1 for the eye of our star stitch. Now all the other star stitch sets that we are going to do is going to be the same as our previous row. So I will meet you back at the end of this row. I'm back with my row 3. I have finished it off with a half double crochet into that same last stitch that our last star stitch is worked into. Now we're going to slip stitch into that second chain when we started off this row. Yarn over, pull through everything. That slip stitch doesn't count as a stitch right now. We're going to chain 1 and flip our work. Each of our even number rows is going to be a single crochet row. So start by inserting your hook into the top of the half double crochet from our previous row. So not this first stitch, but into the second. 1 single crochet into the first eye from our previous row's last star stitch. Insert with 1, and then into all other eyes of our star stitches. 2 single crochets into each of those, and then 1 last single crochet into the chain space that we have when we started this row. From there, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we get the height of the piece that we'd like right before we're ready to get started on our cuff. So if you'd like to cover more of your chest, add more rows, or if you'd like to show a little bit more, do fewer rows. I'll meet you back right after an even number row. Star stitch portion of my body panel is all finished up. I have a total of 6 rows, and that's 2 inches or 5 centimeters, or my total height is 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters. We all should have ended right after an even number row, so from here we're just going to do a few more single crochet rows just to give us a little bit more height. If you like the height that your body portion is at, that is completely fine. I will meet you back in the next clip so we can get started on our cups, but I'm going to be doing an additional 2 single crochet rows just to add a little bit more height and just to have the body portion of the cup blend into the cup just a little bit more seamlessly. So right after our last row, we're going to chain 1, and we're going to continue to work in the same direction that our previous row was worked into, so we will not be flipping our work, and just put 1 single crochet into every stitch. And I will meet you back when we have the single crochet portion of our body finished up. I am back and my single crochet row portion of my body panel is finished. I have a total of 8 rows, and the height is 2.5 inches or 7 centimeters, or my total height is 4 inches or 10 centimeters. I did do a chain up of 1 and cut. The next we're going to have to do is separate our body portion for our cups. The first thing we're going to do is find our middle stitch. You should have just 1 middle stitch since we all should have ended on an even number row. So counting from my tail end, I counted out my 57th middle stitch because I had a total of 113 stitches. From my middle stitch to my tail end, I'm going to count that middle stitch as well. I'm not going to be counting my middle stitch, and we want to make sure that we end on an even number. So I've inserted my stitch marker into the 28th stitch from my middle stitch, and I did that on both sides. Now, if you guys want your cup base to be a little bit wider, feel free to add more stitches. Just make sure that it ends on an even number. Or if you'd like a slimmer cup base, have fewer stitches in between your stitch markers. Just make sure that ends on an even number as well. Now we can get started on our cup. Getting started on our cup, we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out. And then we're going to insert our hook into the outside stitch marker stitch, and we're going to work towards our middle stitch. I'm going to insert my yarn onto my hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and I'm going to put 1 single crochet into every stitch until I reach my middle stitch marker. So into that same stitch that our stitch marker or our chain 1 is in, we're going to insert our hook in through there with a single crochet. Continue putting 1 single crochet into every stitch. Our first single crochet row for the cup is finished, and we want to make sure that we are not working into that middle stitch marker stitch because we need to have an even number of stitches from our side stitch marker to our last single crochet. Now every even number row we're going to do a decrease, so chain 1 and flip your work. For every even number cup row, we're going to start and end with a decrease of 2 single crochets. insert your hook into the last stitch from our previous row, pull through into that following stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3 of those loops. That is our decrease. Continue putting 1 single crochet into every stitch until we have 2 stitches left. We should have 2 stitches left, and to do our decrease once more, insert your hook into that second to last stitch, pull through into that last stitch, pull through all 3. Every odd number row is going to be a single crochet row, so chain 1 and flip your work. Put 1 single crochet into every stitch. Row 3 is finished. Now let's do our following row 4 together, and then it'll be a repeat. So chain 1, flip your work. Since this is an even number row, we're going to start and end with a decrease of 2 single crochets. There's our decrease. Put 1 single crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 2. We have our last 2 stitches in the row, so let's do our decrease into that second to last, pull through, into that last, pull through all 3, and repeat. We're going to repeat our 2 previous rows until our point has just 2 stitches left, making sure that we end on an even number of rows. My cup is all finished. I ended on an even number of cup rows with just 2 stitches left. Now we're going to make a chain that can reach up and over our shoulder and can connect to the back. I need a total of 8.5 inches or 21 centimeters. So I made a chain of 40, and right before we connect it, we're going to need to insert our stitch marker into the back right where we want the strap to attach. Now where you decide to connect your strap is completely up to you. You can have it closer to the tail end, closer to the outside, or even crisscross, whatever you guys feel like. I want mine to just be a regular spaghetti strap, so up and over. So I've eyeballed where the middle of my cup is when I have it on, and I've inserted my stitch marker into the 12th stitch from the tail end. And this is just about 3 inches or 8 centimeters. And once we have our chain, we're going to slip stitch it into that stitch marker stitch. So making sure that our chain isn't twisted, we're going to insert our hook into that stitch marker stitch. So insert, yarn over, and pull through everything to attach. And to make our strap a little bit more sturdy, we're going to single crochet back down. Now this is going to be a little bit different for everyone. We're going to need to slip stitch into the base into the same direction that our available stitch is within our cup. So if you take a look at my cup right here, my next available stitch is along the right, so I will be slip stitching to the right. If your available stitch is to the left, go ahead and insert your hook to the left with a slip stitch, and then we're going to single crochet back down. We're doing it this way so that our strap isn't twisted once when we are connecting it. But since mine is to the right, I'm going to take out my stitch marker, slip stitch into that following stitch that I have into the right, yarn over, pull through everything, and I'm going to put 1 single crochet into every chain. We have single crochet down our chain, we're going to slip stitch it into that available stitch into our cup. So again, making sure that our chain isn't twisted, insert your hook into that available stitch, yarn over, pull through everything, and now that it's connected, do a chain up of 1 and cut. And now that 1 cup and strap is finished, we're going to repeat everything on this other side. I'll meet you back when we have this cup finished. Both cups and straps are finished. Now we're going to work on the skirt portion. So make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, and we're going to insert our hook into any one of the side rows we have along the bottom of our waistband. And we're going to start this with a single crochet row. So insert your yarn onto your hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now let's find our first side row. Mine is this raised row, so I'm going to find that top loop, insert my hook in through there with a single crochet, and then in through my following side row, which is this divot, find that top loop and single crochet. Continue putting 1 single crochet into every side row. Quick tip, we should have the same amount of single crochets as side rows that we made when we started our waistband. and then slip stitch into that chain space and get your 7mm hook ready. Our single crochet row is done. We have slip stitched into that chain space, and now we're going to switch out to our 7mm hook and start by making an even number chain the length that we like for this dress to be, so you can make this long or short. I need a total of 17 inches or 43 centimeters, so I'm going to make a chain of 60. Now that we have our chain, we're going to get started on our star stitch. This first star stitch is going to be done a little bit differently than the first star stitch that we did for the body portion, so let's get this started. After our last chain, we're going to chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to pull up a loop. So insert your hook in through that chain, yarn over, pull up a loop for 2 loops on our hook. We ultimately want 6 loops on our hook again, so into that following chain, pull through for 3, into that following chain, pull through for 4, into that next, pull through for 5, and then in through that following, pull through for 6. Then yarn over, pull through all 6, and chain 1 to form the eye of our star stitch. The rest of our star stitches are going to be the same, so let's just get this first one done really quickly. Inserting our hook into the eye of our previous star stitch, pull through, in between the post of our previous star stitch, pull through, in through the chain that our previous star stitch was last worked into, pull through, and then into each of the following 2 chains as well. So insert, pull through, into that following chain, pull through, for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 loops on our hook. Pull through all 6, chain 1 to form the eye. Continue doing our star stitch till we don't have any more chains left, remembering that that last star stitch that we do is going to have a half double crochet into that same last chain. We have made our way down with our first star stitch row. Our last star stitch did have a half double crochet into that same last chain. Now we need to connect it into the base. So what we're going to do is find that next available stitch into the base, insert your hook in through there with a slip stitch, and a quick tip, if your 7mm hook is just a little bit too big, feel free to switch out to your 5mm hook, but only to slip stitch it into the base. Make sure that going in with the length of our skirt, we're still using our 7mm hook. But once we have that, we need to work our way up to the following row, which is our single crochet row. So slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base, pull through everything, and flip our work. Those 2 slip stitches don't count as a stitch, that's just to connect it into the base, and we're going to do our single crochet row the same way that we did the body. So start by finding the half double crochet from our previous row. This is mine right here. I'm going to insert my hook in through there with 1 single crochet, and then into the eye of my following star stitch, just 1 single crochet. And then from here, 2 single crochets into the eye of every star stitch until we reach the end of the row, making sure that we are working into that turning chain as well. And a quick tip, we should have the same amount of stitches as chains made when we started our skirt portion, -1. We have made our way down with our single crochet row. Let's get started on our following star stitch row. That's going to start with a chain 2. So there's 1, there's 2, and flip our work. Now doing this one is going to be just a little bit different than how we did the body, so let's do this together. We're going to start by inserting our hook into that second chain from our hook's front loop. So making sure that we're not working in through both of those loops, we're just going to insert your hook in through that front loop and pull up a loop. And then into that same chain, we're going to be working in through that back loop, so that one right over there. It might be a little difficult to grab, but go ahead and just use your fingers if you have to, and pull through for a total of 3 loops on our hook. And we still want 6 loops, so into that last stitch from our previous row for 4, the following for 5, and the following for 6. Yarn over, pull through all 6, and chain 1 to form the eye of our star stitch. For the skirt portion, that is going to be how we're always going to do our first star stitch. And the rest of our star stitches will be exactly the same, so continue this until we reach the end of the row. Our row 3 is nearly finished. We just ended the row with a half double crochet. Now we need to connect it into the base. Since we want a little frill when it comes to the skirt portion, connecting our odd number row, we're always going to be slip stitching it into that same stitch that our previous row was worked into, so that stitch will be occupied. This is my stitch right here. I am going to switch out to my 5mm hook just to make this a little bit easier on myself. So into that occupied stitch from our previous row, I'm going to slip stitch into there. And then just to work my way up to the following row, which is a single crochet row, slip stitch in through there, flip your work, and make sure to switch out your hook again. And then working our single crochet row, single crochet once into the top of the half double crochet, and everything is per usual. We're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows, making sure that we're connecting it into the base the same way that we just did until we don't have any more stitches left to work into the base. So I've made my way all the way around my skirt portion. It took a little bit of time, but we are all finished. Now the next thing we're going to do is seam our skirt together, and this is going to be a single crochet seam. So let's all make sure that our work is flipped wrong side out. We're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch, both the front and the back panel. Yarn over, pull through everything, and let's do the first one. Find that first stitch into the front panel, insert your hook. First stitch into the back panel, insert your hook, single crochet them together. Let's do that again. Next stitch into the front panel, insert. Next stitch into the back panel, insert and single crochet. And that's it. Continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left, and then do a chain up of 1 and cut. Now that the skirt portion of the dress is all seamed up, the last thing that we're going to do is optional. All I'm going to do is make a chain the length that I would like for this corset detail to be. Now I made a chain of 110, and that's roughly 25 inches or 63 centimeters. And then once when you have your chain, you can weave in your chain with your hook or a tapestry needle, whichever one you prefer, any which way you would like. So you can make it so that the tie is on top or on bottom. You can make it so it ties the entire part or a little bit lower. Completely up to you if you guys want it. But once we have that all finished up, we are all done. Last thing we're going to have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye!